Vacancy Legal Recruitment, a refreshingly unique and personal talent agency developed specifically for legal. Dedicated to the sector and with extensive experience working across legal services and legal technology, we bridge the gap between your requirements and top-tier legal talent. Get in touch today and say hello at vacancy.co.uk.
You're listening to the Today's Conveyancer podcast, the leading source of information for residential property lawyers in England and Wales. Don't forget to subscribe and sign up to our free newsletter at todaysconveyancer.co.uk. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter.
Hello, welcome along to the latest Today's Conveyancer podcast. Today, I welcome Omar Fatha Rally, the founder and CEO of Tellida Limited. Tellida is an offshoring company with offices both in the UK and in Sri Lanka. And I guess to be quite forthright at the outset of the conversation, Omar, I don't know whether you would describe it as a stigma or some uncertainty around offshoring, particularly when it comes to conveyancing. And so what I'd like to try and achieve through the podcast is maybe do some myth busting, talk about actually some of the practicalities involved in offshoring as well, so that listeners can kind of get a better understanding of it. So thank you so much for joining the podcast. Appreciate it.
Thanks, David.
I like to try and get a feel for who we've got on today. We're the start of a bad joke, I think, really. What happens if a journalist and accountant get in the same room together? They make a podcast like this, because you were just saying before we started recording, your background actually is an accountancy.
Yeah. So I basically started off in accountancy in the commercial side of it in industry, then moved on to the business process outsourcing side, set up a company in Sri Lanka for a big conglomerate, did a management buyout about 15 years ago, and then started Tellida. So that's how I moved in from being an accountant to basically founding this company and taking it forward. So as if I tell you about Tellida, we do a lot of finance and accounting work for the UK, Australia, US, Singapore, etc. But in this podcast, I will sort of concentrate on the conveyancing, outsourcing, offshoring side of, the work we do. So that's Tellida. And Tellida in a nutshell is 15 years old. We've got 2 delivery centers in Sri Lanka. We've got about 100 plus staff working. We've been in business for 15 years, predominantly with the UK and Australia. As a company, we work 24/7. We are an ISO 27001 information security certified company and got clients all over the world.
All of which kind of leads me into that first line of questioning, really, which is about helping the listeners, helping conveyancers to understand what offshoring is all about. So take us through why offshoring kind of works. What is it that you're kind of offering to the sector that offers some value to conveyancers?
Right. So if you look at the conveyancing industry today in the UK, the biggest challenge they have is, the staffing side of it. Every conveyancer is, pressurized. They can't sort of match the expectation of what the clients want. Completion times have gone further and further. Even though technology has, improved over the past decades, we haven't seen the sort of timelines of completion coming down. And that's mainly, I think, due to, after COVID, the industry, when the numbers came back, we haven't seen enough people coming into the conveyancing industry in the UK. So one of the options they have is, one option is to improve technology and get everything done with less humans. But until that happens, and that is in the process, but you also still need to get things moving. So therefore, offshoring is a very good option for sort of conveyancing firms to look at. And we've been in this business for about 15 years now. Of course, seen a tremendous growth in the last 5 years, where more and more firms are willing to listen to what's going on, giving us trials. And I see the global offshoring sort of destinations have really developed in the conveyancing side. It used to be finance and accounting and other data entry stuff earlier, but today even conveyancing has moved down the line. We've seen a lot of destinations take up conveyancing. Sri Lanka, for instance, has more than 10 sort of firms outsourcing to Sri Lanka, and some of the top 25 firms using Sri Lanka for their work. So I think it's really happening now. And as you go, if you really look at what is off, why would a company go offshore? Because some of the technical skills that are needed, some of the staffing requirements cannot be matched in that country. Then you look at offshore, and a massive cost advantage. So you basically use that, and you use the skill set, the cost advantage, to bring value to your clients, your end clients, basically. So once you get that working right, then the potential to expand and deliver to your clients is unlimited. Like for instance, in instances, we've been able to bring down sort of completion time for certain clients, starting off with maybe 12, 14 weeks, but being able to bring it down to 11, 10, and sometimes even 9. Right. So that's because you can use the sort of staff there to, if you need to be on a phone call for 30 minutes or 40 minutes, because the costs are not so high, they can get that job done. You can improve the chasers. You can do shifts, like if you look at Sri Lanka, is 4.5 hours ahead of UK at this time. Mm-hmm. Where you get a day shift working in Sri Lanka, so that when the fee earners come here to work, all their yesterday's tasks have been completed. So it makes it easy. The client is updated, a lot of information has gone out. So your at the end, like I said, the client is happy, and you basically got your completions going.
I've got a whole sort of raft of questions wrapped up in what you've talked about there.
Okay.
What kind of jobs firms offshoring to you?
Like, I think A to Z on the sort of conveyancing process, starting from onboarding right up to post completion. So if you look at our company, the only thing we can't do is that we don't have the license to exchange. So we will have to use British, solicitor, a person with license here to do that exchange. But other than that, even preparing the documents for exchange can be done offshore. So just to answer your question, very fast, you can do everything that is legally permitted to do outside the country.
And the legal framework in Sri Lanka is very similar to England and Wales, isn't it? And this is a hangover from the Commonwealth and from Empire almost.
Exactly. So basically our law started off with the British law, and then it was slightly tweaked to suit, the Sri Lankan context of it. So having said that, even if you look at the sort of education, the private institutes like who have LLB, most of them affiliated to the UK. So they have, LLBs and LLMs, all going through the UK qualification and getting that. The private law college, of course, is the Sri Lankan one, but again, like you rightly said, it's all devised with the British law.
Because I think that's probably one of the things that is a bit of a myth bust, in that offshoring and outsourcing often conjures up images of passing work to unqualified or inexperienced staff. But what you're saying actually is that often that's simply not the case.
That's definitely not the case, because you have companies who might, say that they can do it, but it's up to the company who's basically offshoring the work to do the right due diligence wherever in the world they are going into, and make sure that the company they're working with has the right credentials and actually can do what they say. So that will, involve what training material they use, how they, what clients they have worked with, what softwares, case management systems they are working with, and stuff like that. So it's important to do the right due diligence, and then, work with the company that you're working when you're offshoring. And in our case, we'll always be very transparent. We even offer to interview the staff that are going to work on the project so that they know that. And even if a company wants a trial, we'll say, look, you want a trial, give us a couple of, cases, we'll run them through and show you. Because the fact that we've worked with many companies and have worked with the top case management systems, we're able to, come in faster and do it. If not, it'll take time because you have to understand how the case management system works before you basically work for the client.
You mentioned that for example, you got the ISO accreditation.
Yeah.
And you talk about due diligence. I mean, what that's a really important thing for the conveyancer, because this is a big trust sort of thing
Yes.
here, isn't there? Where people
Yeah.
are sort of saying, look, I'm placing a huge amount of responsibility in your hands. What reassurances do you provide as an organization around that due diligence piece, and really, again, myth busting the idea that we're outsourcing to, forgive the sort of phrase, but outsourcing to cowboys?
Yeah. See, actually, that was always in the past, I would say, in the past decade, that myth was there. Today, with a sort of acceptance of work from home and all of that, people are accepting the outsourcing and the offshoring. So outsourcing will say, look, the meaning of outsource is something what you can do a process in your organization, you given it to a third party. And offshoring is you giving it to a third party, not in your country, which is very far off. And then you have nearshore, which is close to your country. So in this offshoring process, like I said, the due diligence part is very, very important. And, we've got companies going up to asking the staff whether the staff, got a police report, what can we see their certificates in terms of their education certificates? Can we get a copy of your ISO certificate? Can we understand your entire recruitment process? So if you look at our company, what we would really do is to manage the security side of it. We look at the physical security. We'll say we have strict access control, and only on a need basis you can get into the process flow. Even within the offices, every staff can't move from one location to the other. So that's controlled environment. On a sort of data and system security, you have to have your firewalls, encryption, all of that. You can go deep down up to, being the IP address and the laptop to connect to the system. So you have to be able to manage that. You have to have a security policy, information security policy in place. You've got to do vulnerability testing regularly, things like that, and be able to demonstrate that to the client. Then on the staff side of it, it's regular sort of information being given to them, training given to them on information security, what we have, regularly do. Then you have those recorded. You have sort of quizzes going every 6 months that the staff is up to date with the regulatory training. And further, the client might also give you a few more trainings that is required on their system to manage things. So you go through all of that, and then the myth of how secure it is it a sweatshop, is it a cowboy, all that gets eliminated. So it's also a lot of transparency while talking, and you got to have your documentation in place, you got to have your policies in place, you got to have your certificates in place. Things work out then.
You talked about, for example, you do facilitate clients onboarding. In the UK, or in England and Wales in particular, the SRA have really clamped down on anti-money laundering, for example.
Yes.
And how do you kind of deal with that particular issue? Have you got staff that are trained in sort of the money laundering regulations as they are in the UK? Yeah.
So basically we have staff trained on AML, on anti-money laundering procedures. We will go through that, and always, if we do have a question and we say we are in doubt, we will raise it back to the client to say, look, here's a situation we suspect. What is your take on that? So staff are trained. Then there's regular further training when there are changes. Those are updated. We've subscribed to different portals and systems that give us that information. So we have a structure in terms of train, quality control, team lead, which this information will pass down and disseminate into the team. We have our own wiki for training that this information goes in. And if we think that, this is very important, then there will be sort of test given to the staff saying, look, we want you to go through this, answer these questions. And, they are sort of getting then recertified onto the flow saying, look, they've passed this part of the new change and amendment that has gone through.
I guess one of the big issues with outsourcing and offshoring is where liability falls. And, money laundering is one particular challenge, but there's a myriad of challenges, particularly in a process like conveyancing. What do you offer in terms of insurances or indemnification against errors that you may be responsible for, that ultimately the firms are going to end up taking the brunt of, because it's the firm that gets nobbled, isn't it, ultimately?
Yeah. So very, very good question. And I've had this question coming in from a lot of clients. So what I have for us, we are just outsourcing firm that is supporting your firm. So we work with basically the information you have given and the processes you have told us to. But in this process, there's always a possibility that a human can make a mistake, right? For instance, there could be an email that was similar and somebody's confidential information went to somebody else. Now, the issue is here actually in this process is how much can you basically charge a client, because it boils down for us to get that indemnity insurance costs a lot, and it's pointless two companies having the same indemnity insurance. So we basically indemnify the client in terms of a contract that, if we make a mistake or staff has done something wrong, but we have a certain cap that we will basically go to, and that's always discussed with the client. It's always a point that comes out, and I have explained to them this is how, but if you want me to get full insurance, I will do that, but then the cost is going to go up further. So it all depends on that, because usually they have, and in the last 15 years, I like to say that it's never been an issue. I'm not saying that there hasn't been a single mistake, but there has never been an issue, because that happens even in the UK. So, a genuine mistake that can go on. But if something is identified that there was a particular fraud or, something like that, then we are totally liable to the client.
And let's flip that round. So let's say, for example, that the client comes to you with a particular process that they have, and you identify there's a better way of doing it, or there's a flaw in it, or it doesn't sort of go with your own best practice, for example. Do you find that clients are receptive to hear that? Oh, we could change this and we could improve that, and if we did this slightly differently, then the process might be simpler, more straightforward, better, for the sake of argument?
Yeah. So initially, the clients are always very receptive. They wouldn't take it because they have been doing it for many years. But if you can, do it and show them, look, here's a change and this is what we've got out of doing this, then gradually they accept it and they will come on to it. So the answer to that is some clients will accept it, some clients won't. We've got clients on very primitive systems, takes a longer time to work and on that and all, but that's the way they want to work. So sometimes they are old fashioned, but on the other side, we've got clients who, already are using AI to work and then getting support from us to support that system. So you'd have it's actually what maturity level each company is in, and how much the sort of the senior partners, the directors want to, grow this. Some are just very happy with what's going on. So like I said, the answer to that is yes and no. It all depends on the client, but we will always suggest, saying, look, this is a better system, this is a better system. And it's confidence. Even when they work with us for, say, 1 or 2 years, then they're very confident with the team, they're confident with the manager, then they would listen to everything they say.
Going back to that liability point, what about supervision? What do you have in place around supervising the staff within Tellida?
Right.
And then what role does the firm in England and Wales play in terms of ensuring that you're supervised?
So basically, we have a structure in terms of manage, team lead, and quality controller. So we work with smaller teams now. Even in a single client, we might have 3 teams for them. So that one team leader will manage 3 to 4 of the staff, and they will supervise that work. Then we have the quality control team that will check that the work that is done is according to the standard. And then the manager will not check that work, but looking at the whole process and the systems in place, knows what's going on. But that's done from our side. Then before completion, it'll be always the solicitor in the UK checking that file finally to make sure that everything that had to happen has happened in the right way. And then basically goes into post completion. So at that point, before the completion is where the UK will know, if there is something gone wrong. But today with systems at every stage, if something isn't right or what has, happened. So we've got, like, I would say, from the team leader at one gate, then quality control a second gate, before this really moves on to the next phase. And internally, we have developed our systems to say, look, we will know if something is going wrong, maybe delaying too much or wrong information put in there or things like that before it really reaches the client.
This feels a bit like 20 questions. But
no, go ahead. Feel free. Yeah.
Like I said, we're trying to do some myth busting here on some of this stuff. I go back to the point you made about sort of security and logins, that kind of thing. And you talked about technology adoption. And if I use an accountant analogy here, a lot of accountants might prefer to use one software over another. They might use Xero over Sage or whatever it might be. Within your own organization, there are so many different technology tools, and you've alluded to the fact that obviously there's this proliferation now in conveyancing of technology. How do you manage that internally from the point of view of becoming trained on these? And by extension, do you have teams that operate on particular pieces of software who understand it? So somebody comes to you and says, oh, we use visual files, or for the sake of argument, or we use Red Brick, or we use Aquasoft, whoever it might be. You then allocate that work to people who've got more experience of using those systems?
Yes and no. So we use about 6 different case management systems and maybe about 10, 12 different other softwares associated with, the case management systems that's helping conveyancers. So not that we'll pick the staff and put him there, but we know within the company that we have the expertise to do it. We wouldn't say a new company comes in and they're giving us a software that we've never used. We wouldn't see that as a problem, because if you've run 6 different case management systems, how much different can the next one be, right? So we will, but we're very upfront where you'll have to tell the client, look, I don't have experience in this, but that's not a problem. And this happens with all our accounting clients, because there are much more accounting softwares than the case management systems. So you basically tell them, they give you the logins. Sometimes there's online training, sometimes they give you a bit of training, and sort of team leads and quality controllers can figure the system out and move forward. So case management system or a software wouldn't hamper a client offshoring to us, and it shouldn't hamper them offshoring to any company, provided that company has certain expertise in softwares, because at the end it's conveyancing. It's that same process, but it happens in different stages in a software, and the add-ons coming in. So basically that wouldn't be a problem for any company to take over an offshoring process in conveyancing, provided they have the experience in doing it.
Probably a question I should have asked right at the outset, really. But I mean, it's common practice and it's understood that offshoring and outsourcing is compliant, it can be done. But what is the SRA and the CLC's position on this? And what do you have to do to ensure that you're compliant with their expectations?
So actually it's the solicitor firm in the UK that has to establish that. But for that, I think, SRA and CLC both want the work supervised properly. right? So a company in UK has to demonstrate that they have adequate supervision on the work that is going on. And then they basically have to ensure that client confidentiality is maintained in this process. And basically the responsibility will be on the UK sort of solicitor firm, but through like we discussed, through due diligence and other procedures, they will ensure that they are compliant, because the SRA or CLC does not prohibit you from offshoring any of the work as long as you are in control of what goes on. So it boils down to, again, having your ISO information security certification, you becoming GDPR compliant, demonstrating that the team is qualified, the team understands, and you have control over what's going on.
You have a vested interest, obviously, in extolling the virtues of offshoring. What I hope that we've done through the course of the podcast, and I'm appreciative of your time and some of the clarification that you've given us, Omar, as well, is a little bit of myth busting and just helping conveyancers to understand, I guess, some of the technical expertise that goes into this, the security expertise, which is really, really important, obviously, in this day and age, and the skills as well. So if we've managed to do that in the course of a 25-minute podcast, then hopefully we've left conveyancers a little more enlightened. So thanks very much indeed, Omar.
Thank you very much, David. Pleasure talking to you.
The Today's Conveyancer podcast is available on your preferred podcast provider. It's also available on todaysconveyancer.co.uk. My thanks to Omar. Thank you as ever for listening, and we'll see you again soon.